Well, everyone, summer is like a third of the way done, and we're back with another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. I'm talking about climatological or meteorological summer, which is June, July, August, and we're already at the end of June for this episode here. Join with me, Dan Skeldon. Dan, I'm like getting sad already. I'm getting like pre-sad for the waning days of summer.
I'm in the minority here, so this is an unpopular opinion, but summer is my least favorite season. So I say bring on fall and winter. I am excited that we're a third of the way done, but again, don't want to say that too loud because but as I know summer is the wheelhouse for most people.
That is true. Dan was just talking meteorologically speaking, not
Yes, correct.
economically speaking. Yeah, I
Correct.
mean,
Correct.
and we're not even into the prime. We're not even the peak shore season yet. The taffy's still, getting made. We got the ice cream on the boardwalk. Manco's doing their thing, whatever, so on and so forth. So we got plenty of summer to go, of course. Somebody who knows a little bit about everything I just said, though, is our guest for today. Matt Lanza, who's a writer, one of the head honchos at Space City Weather in Houston, Texas. The reason why I said what I said at the beginning is because Matt Lanza is from Summers Point, born and raised in Summers Point, New Jersey. Went to Mainland High School for our South Jersey Shore folks. Has traveled around the country, for work, but has been in Houston, Texas for a while now. So Matt, welcome to the show. You missing anything about the Ocean City Boardwalk here on a late June episode of TFT? Anything we can send over to you?
You just dropped the Manco. I mean, I am in there. Like that is one of my first stops, for sure. The pizza's good down here. Like there's good pizza, but it's just not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah, Boardwalk Pizza like hits different. Like
Yeah,
it's different. It just goes well with the salt there. I don't know. I can't describe it. It just goes well with the salt there.
it does. It's just the right environment for it. I don't know. I love the boardwalk. So
Yeah, yeah, totally. All right, so we have you on here not to talk about pizza, although we can certainly at the end when we do the
Good.
one thing we can't stop talking about. But we wanted to have you on because you know the Jersey Shore, and you're in Houston. You're along the Gulf Coast. We know what tidal flooding does down there. A lot of flood insurance policies. I just felt like there was a lot of connections and crosses between the two that maybe you could kind of shed light for our listeners about, how do we compare and contrast New Jersey to the Gulf Coast? So let me just start off with this. What is Space City Weather? What is your role there? And how long has Space City Weather been around for?
yeah, we're actually coming up on our 10th anniversary this October, so that's very exciting. We started Space City Weather back in 2015. My co-author on the site, and he's the one that really founded it, Eric Berger, used to do a column for the Houston Chronicle, or had a blog for the Houston Chronicle. It was pretty popular. He talked about weather and science and space and things like that. And after he left the Houston Chronicle, he's like, hey, I've been helping him out for a few months. Do you want to kind of continue and we'll just do our own thing? We're like, yeah, sure. We'll start it and we'll see what happens. And first couple of years were cool. And then Hurricane Harvey hit in 2017 and the site done blowed up. And it was, we got a lot of our readers from that. And we've kind of established our brand as being like no hype. Like we're pretty subdued most of the time. And then when what hits the fan, we amp it up a little bit and we'll start talking about all the things, particularly with hurricanes, obviously. And with flooding. Flooding is kind of synonymous with the Houston area, for a number of reasons, which we'll get into. But yeah, we operate kind of the low hype blog for the city of Houston.
And
And
I should mention, too, you're a certified digital meteorologist as well, fellow CDM.
I am CDM number 14. Proud to
Yes.
be here. Not number one. Not number one.
Sure that person's really special, whoever number one. Anyway, Dad, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know it was on with two CDMs. So congratulations, guys. Matt, I was going to ask you what the is that the key to your success? I mean, I think it's such a Space City Weather is such a great resource, for the Houston area, I wish it could be replicated for every major metropolitan area, especially where disaster hits. But what has been the key to the success and the explosion of the popularity, of the site?
Yeah, I think it's really how we go about it. I say the no hype aspect of things. People, it resonates with people. To a point. The way media is right now is you have to be to stand out. You just kind of have to be a little bit louder, right? It's hard because a lot of those metrics are what drives everything, advertising, pay, and all that stuff. So to kind of come in and be like, no, we're not going to do that is a little bit different, and people are like, oh, that's kind of cool. But really, ultimately, I think what sells it, like you can say you're no hype, but like unless you can connect with your audience, it doesn't work. And I think we have a weird way, and I can't explain it, but we connect with them because I think we talk very conversationally. We don't hit people over the head with the science of weather. We'll inject it when we have to, but we're very conversational. I want us to kind of like write how we talk. I want you to feel like if you meet me in person, like, oh yeah, that's the person that the guy that writes the blog. I get it. And we're very empathetic because we understand that people in Houston have been through a lot, and a lot of it is weather related. So they're really looking for kind of that, hold my hand through the event sort of way of going about things, and that's what we try to do.
Matt, let's just give our listeners an idea of, like you said, Houston, right? Space City weather. Does that include the immediate coast? Does Houston get tidal flooding? How does that layout work?
Yeah, the geography of Houston is kind of interesting. So if you ever looked at Texas on a map, you look at the southeast part, Galveston Bay really stands out. And that's kind of looks like somebody took a bite out of the coast on southeast Texas, and that's Galveston Bay. And then there's Galveston Island. And of course, everybody knows Galveston because of the 1900 hurricane that ripped through there 125 years ago now. Just recently did a talking event about that storm, which was really fascinating for me to kind of dig into. So Houston is also sprawling. When people think about the Houston area, you think sprawl. It is not like the northeastern cities are a little bit more condensed. You've got your central business district, and then you've got the suburbs, right? Houston is kind of like you've got a little bit of a core, and then you've got just sprawling suburbs all over the place. And it could take you 80 miles to go from one side of the city to the other. Which is a long time, and then you've got traffic on top of that. So, we cover Houston, we cover all the way down to Galveston, because that's technically part of the Houston-Galveston metropolitan area. The Weather Service office is based down in League City, which is about 2/3 of the way to Galveston from Houston. And they cover the Houston-Galveston region. I mean, we go all the way up to a place called Huntsville, which is about 80 miles, 90 miles to the north of Houston, and we're really all the way out west and to the southwest and even to the east. Like we've got people in Beaumont that like us. We've got people all the way down the coast to Corpus Christi that we're not even really talking about them, but they'll tune in to, find out what's going on and get our take on things because, it impacts them as well. So, coastal flooding is an issue, and it impacts, kind of like in New Jersey, we get both the bay and the Gulf, not the ocean, the Gulf here. And so, it can impact communities on both sides there.
Oh, Matt, is the nuisance flooding like, in New Jersey, you get, nice day, just an onshore wind, bright sunshine, you can get the nuisance flooding into the streets. It happens a lot in New Jersey. Is nuisance flooding kind of a less common, more common, as common event in Texas? And of course, down along the Gulf Coast, juiced, high dew point tropical air, you're going to have a lot more of those heavy rain runoff, freshwater flooding, and of course, more intense hurricanes too. But where does the tidal flooding, the nuisance stuff rank on that scale?
Yeah, I think it's kind of somewhat similar to maybe a little bit less frequent than what you see up in Jersey. It is a lot of times what causes our nuisance flooding is just we'll get these instances in summertime where you've got just the right orientation of high pressure and you've got this broad fetch going across the Gulf. So it goes all the way from Cuba straight into Texas. It's southeast winds. And what it does is it just, piles up, water really. And because it's usually a persistent southeast wind, it's about 15 to 20 miles an hour. It's not anything ridiculous, but, it just doesn't really allow the water to drain a whole heck of a lot during low tide. And, you're not going to get significant flooding. It's a little bit different than Jersey in that, usually the causeways are fine. Everything's kind of built to handle this for the most part. But you get run up on the beach, and the real culture shock coming to Texas is when you go to the beach and you see cars on the beach. It's just like, what is this? And so, a lot of people will bring their Jeeps, they'll bring their trucks to the beach, and that's what they'll do. Some of the beaches are actually like devoted to that. They're dedicated to just bringing your vehicle on there. And then obviously when you have events like that, you can't do that. So you have to do it the old-fashioned way. But we really do get the real serious issue that's kind of interesting. What coincides with our nuisance flooding are rip currents a lot. We will get some serious rip currents, and it's kind of like, you said New Jersey, you got the blue sky, everything's clear. A lot of people are in the water, it's 1,000,000 degrees, and the water's not that cold, but it's something. But you get these rip current events, and at least 5 to 10 times a summer we go through this, and it becomes very hazardous. So the flooding doesn't cause as many problems necessarily as all the other stuff that comes with the long fetch winds across the Gulf.
Interesting. All right, cool. We're going to take a break here, Matt. Our first break here. We'll be back on the other side. Plenty more with meteorologist Matt Lanza with Space City Weather. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Welcome back to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk with meteorologist Joe Bartucci. I am Dan Skeldon, and we are joined by a third meteorologist this Tuesday, meteorologist Matt Lanza from Space City Weather. And Matt, we were talking before the break, Texas being on the Gulf Coast, nice, juicy tropical air. You get the nuisance tidal flooding, but more than New Jersey, the precipitable water, just so much more down along the Gulf Coast. And what that means is it can really rain. Jersey, you get, a 5-10 inch rainfall. That's a big deal. You can measure it in feet sometimes on the Texas coast. What's that like, and what type of problems does that much rain cause?
Yeah, I got to tell you, as a New Jersey native, like coming down here was just a total shock. It used to be like when you talk up there, it's like, well, 1 inch an hour, 2 inches an hour. That's a really good rain up in the Northeast, but like that's a day that ends in Y here. And it's like once you start getting up to the 3 to 4 inch an hour rates, that's when you start seeing the problems. And it's just witnessing it and trying to drive through it and go. It's incredible. It's hard to describe. But yeah, it's a big problem at the coast. Like we definitely have to worry about it coming from both the water and from the sky here. In the summertime, obviously we get daily thunderstorms. They'll dump an inch or two of rain and kind of go on their way. Usually it's not that big of a deal, but every now and then you'll get like these tropical waves that come through and they end up terminating on the Texas coast. And what'll happen is you'll get these big clusters of thunderstorms that form and hug the coast. And so places like Galveston and down toward Matagorda Bay, Port Aransas, toward Corpus Christi, you'll just get rain that's falling 1 to 2 inches an hour for hours, and you'll get 8 to 10 inches of rain there in like 12 hours. And Galveston doesn't exactly drain well. Galveston's a city on an island, so they're going to have drainage problems as it is because it's so urbanized. But the water it doesn't go anywhere, so a lot of Galveston will flood in those situations. Just rainfall flooding. It just kind of stands there for a few hours before it finally kind of drains into the Gulf. Everything's flat, so it's not going anywhere. And then, some days you add on to it with the southeast winds that can pile up some of that water. You definitely get some water that gets close to some of the roads on those days, and or it just won't drain as quick. So, it becomes a little bit, I feel like a lot of times when you're forecasting in the Northeast, it's kind of one dimensional in terms of like the coastal flooding. It's wind and water, and there you go. But here it's like, okay, wind and water, but then how's it going to drain? And then alternatively to that, if you have like a tropical system, the inland areas, you've got this system of bayous and creeks that kind of empty into Galveston Bay. So if you've got this persistent surge of 3 or 4 feet in Galveston Bay, those bayous don't drain as quickly. So you end up with more backed up water and more flooding susceptibility even further inland. So it's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, it certainly is. Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No, a quick follow-up. I'm sorry, Joe. Jersey, you got a mix of tourists and locals, and locals might be a little more knowledgeable because they're there year round as far as flooding etiquette, if you will, and flooding safety. What's it like on the Texas Gulf Coast? Obviously, you have multiple types of flooding probably happening more frequently. Are the residents there, are the tourists there pretty knowledgeable, pretty informed, or is the education perhaps lacking among the populace?
Yeah, it's a little interesting because I think that after Hurricane Harvey hit, everybody remembers it as Hurricane Harvey. It wasn't a hurricane when it got to Houston, right? It was a tropical storm, but it just dumped copious amounts of rain. So a lot of people kind of associate like tropical storms and rain, more than tropical storms or hurricanes and surge. So there's this interesting kind of gap in overall knowledge, I think sometimes. And I think people do kind of understand it, but since we haven't had a really good, significant surge event here for 17 years now, Hurricane Ike was in 2008. That was the last big one. It's far enough from people's minds that they kind of forget about it a little bit. And especially a place like Houston that has a lot of, not necessarily turnover among the population, but a lot of people coming in from interior Texas, from other parts of the South, from the North, from California. Those are people that are not used to this kind of weather. And, I think if you have a number of people that visit Galveston Island at any point in time, most of them are going to be more confused than anything. You'll have the year-rounders that get it, particularly the ones that live in the coast, but the ones that live inland may not even fully appreciate it. I mean, sometimes Galveston, even though it's only about 50 miles from Houston, can feel like it's a world away. Because it's not like drastically different, but it's just a different place. It's coastal, and it's hard to grasp sometimes when you live inland. So it does create, again, a kind of an interesting dynamic and interplay among people.
So, education's obviously key for any kind of awareness of coastal flooding. We talk about it all the time at the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. One of the things that you do that I really like, because it's so simple, is your Space City Weather flood alert. I'll let you talk, but just to make a real quick thing, it's on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the worst, 1 being, minor impact. So we have about 2 minutes in this segment. I just want to turn it over to you and you explain that to people and how you develop that.
Yeah, so after Hurricane Harvey, everybody was skittish and on edge. And then a couple years later, we had Tropical Storm Imelda, 2019. And that did some serious flooding east of the Houston area. It did get into parts of the metro area, but it was really east of Houston toward Beaumont that got just almost as bad flooding as they did during Harvey in some places. Some people had just moved back into their homes and they flooded again. It was, a really awful situation. But coming out of that, we recognized that people were very much on edge anytime it rains. So we felt that we needed to come up with a way to set their expectations. So we just created this scale. We said, all right, 1 to 5. 5 is Harvey. What's 4? What's 3? We did a little bit of research on past flooding and how many homes and cars flooded, and just came up with this 1 to 5 scale for Houston, and people loved it. One of the interesting things is we're revamping it this year because we recognize that we came up with this ourselves, and it wasn't scientifically rigorous in any capacity. So we actually partnered with the neuropsychology department here at the University of Houston to come up with this a little bit more of a rigorous scientific way of explaining the impacts of the flooding, the more action messages than past events as analogs, ways to help, what can I do if it's a stage 1 or stage 2 event? We get those frequently. I think most people know 3, 4, and 5 is bad, but how bad? What do I need to be doing? And so that's kind of what we're aiming to do and make it more useful to people down here to be able to utilize. And, it was designed mainly with rainfall in mind. But theoretically, we could easily adapt it to storm surge as well. But I think the hurricane, warnings and things like that do a pretty good job already. So, it's just kind of another way we try to connect with people and help them out.
Awesome. Yeah, very useful and easily digestible, which is what we want. All right, we're going to take our last break here. We'll come back on the other side as we wrap up with Matt Lanza from Space City Weather.
This is what the Down Beach Seafood Fest is all about. It's about community. It's about friends. It's about culture, right? The food culture in Atlantic County is rich.
And as always, make sure to check out Tidal Flooding Talks new episodes every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We are on pretty much every social media platform, whether it's my weather pages, Dan's weather pages, Trix 57's weather pages, or, of course, the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. All right, so, Matt, we are going to continue our conversation here about flooding. When it comes to the, just a little more in the comparisons between what you see at the Gulf and in New Jersey. Is there anything else that comes to mind just from you growing up in New Jersey and what you see in Texas?
Yeah, I feel like the interesting difference to me is like in New Jersey, anytime you'd have coastal flooding, and I mean, granted, it's been a while since I've been there now, and it's probably becoming a little bit more frequent that you see it, but it was always an event. Like it was always like a big deal. I distinctly remember I had friends that lived, family friends that lived in Ocean City. We would allow them to come over and stay with us if there was going to be a bad, tidal flooding event that we knew was coming from a nor'easter or something. Just kind of get them on the mainland, really protect their car more than anything. And so here it's just, I don't want to say more lackadaisical, but it's more just kind of, yeah, it is flooding. It happens. Which is a weird thing to say. Like, particularly in a place like Galveston, I feel like Galveston and New Orleans just kind of have this like attitude that's just so laid back. There's like just kind of deal with it, and go about their business. Like it doesn't stop everything. Like I feel like everything stops. That's your focus, and then when it's cleared up, you clean things up and go back to it. Here it's just kind of like you live with it. When it comes to like the rainfall flooding, it's different here, but the tidal flooding, I mean, other than if we're in a tropical system, it is just really chill. Like I don't want to say it's an afterthought, but it kind of is in a way. So it's kind of interesting.
Hmm. Two things you've said also in the topic of our discussion so far. I guess I'm wondering, do you think this is the same everywhere? Jersey, Texas, or anywhere that floods. Number one, people use past storms as measuring sticks. Sandy is the measuring stick in New Jersey. For old generations, it was the '62 storm, the nor'easter, or really old generations, maybe the '44 hurricane. But Texas has those events too, whether it be Ike or Harvey. And does that help people? Does that help you communicate your message as far as, visualizing what a storm can do? And then the second follow-up question to that, Matt, would be, do you think no matter where you are, you experience a storm, that definitely helps the education process as well. If you just hear about it, it's not the same as actually being through it.
No, as far as your second question goes, I totally agree. Like, unless you go through it, there's really just something about it. Like Harvey, Harvey was interesting because I was actually in Dallas because my company said we're going to Dallas, and we're going to station you up there so you don't have to deal with this. But you still lived it. It was a lived experience because getting text messages from people in real time, covering it in real time. It just absolutely it sticks with you. It really sticks with you, and it just becomes like singed in your mind. And people do respond to these past analogs as things. I think the really interesting thing in Houston and in Galveston is, Harvey's obviously the benchmark for flooding, but Ike is the benchmark for storm surge. And like I said, Ike happened 17 years ago. We are still today talking about building a coastal barrier, what we call the Ike Dike, is basically the surge barrier, kind of like what they have in New Orleans. That's meant to close and protect parts of Galveston and then ultimately the Houston Ship Channel, which is just a mammoth petrochemical shipping. It's a huge economic impact to the country, let alone the region. And so we're still talking about that 17 years later. So that is absolutely the storm of record for people now. And I think that it was, before Ike, it was Alicia. People still talk a little bit about Alicia. That was 1983. Before Alicia, it was Carla in 1961. Before Carla, it was, you just keep going back, right? Every generation has this storm that kind of sticks with them. And for the current residents here, it's Ike and Harvey.
I think this will be our last question. I'll ask it. So last week we had Alex Harris, who's we'll say a colleague of yours.
Yeah.
I know you guys have done some things before from the Miami Herald, and a lot of our focus with her was about rising real estate costs despite the flood insurance rates going up and up. Is that something you're seeing at the Gulf Coast? And could you talk to us a little bit more about that? It sounds like the answer is yes.
It is really interesting. Like there was a long time that Galveston didn't do a whole lot of building, but we're starting to see now people come back and we're starting to see some more developments, starting to see some more condos go up and things like that. And, most people are kind of priced out. The price of real estate is pretty high, but the homeowner's insurance has just absolutely, it's done this everywhere in the country, but it has skyrocketed here in the last 2 to 3 years. Just absolutely skyrocketed. And interestingly, a lot of that is because of hail. We get these big hailstorms that just everybody needs a new roof in Dallas, or San Antonio. Right. And so everybody's premium goes up as a result. It's less about hurricanes and more about that. And so we are seeing that, but yeah, the development kind of continues, definitely not at the pace that I think they would like it to. But I think there is a little bit of a false sense of security that creeps back in. I mean, the distance from an event really does, you lose it a little bit. You lose that lesson, which is why, going back to the previous point and going through it is so informative on everything. So yeah, I mean, I would not be buying coastal real estate in Galveston if it were me right now. And particularly the other interesting thing here is we are one of the fastest land subsidence in the country. So the land is sinking, the seas are rising, and we get floods, from the sky. So it's not a good combination. So yeah, we're interesting times here.
Yeah, very interesting. And, just for our listeners too, New Jersey's also the land sinking as well at the Jersey Shore too, and that's separate of the rising sea levels that we've seen. So anyway, Matt, this was great. We're going to end this as we do every week, which is the one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. Matt, you are our guest. All yours.
So I'm going to go with the fact that, it's hurricane season. I'll try and keep it on brand here. Hurricane season's here. I've been doing a lot of talking about hurricane season first month of the season. And one of the things I always tell people is, you hear it a lot, but really you need to be prepared and you need to, and I tell people this not because, for your safety after a storm so much as just the stress that's caused by these things. Like it's a stressful time when you have to pack it up and go. So, know what you're going to do with your kids, know what you're going to do with your pets and where you're going to find your documents. Have it all done now so that when the time comes, one less thing to worry about. So just make your life easier.
Very good. Very good. Dan?
Yeah, good advice, man. I'm going to go off brand and just wonder if my Red Sox will have any chance of seeing your Astros, and presuming that your Astros in the playoffs, and I'm thinking probably not this year, but I'll continue to hope.
Astros are always tough. They're always a tough out. So I split my allegiance, Astros, Phillies. We'll see. The Phillies are an interesting team this year, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm an Orioles fan, which looked great at the beginning before the season, and then they dug themselves too deep of a hole, I think. But anyway, I'm going to go a little bit off topic as well because I can't stop thinking about what my Thursday night and Friday is going to look like. That would be the 26th and 27th because the week that we're listening to this, I am in Boise, Idaho for the American Meteorological Society Conference. I am flying back on Thursday, getting back Thursday night, and then Friday I'm going to Scotland. So I gotta make sure I get home first. I gotta repack and do some laundry, and then fly across the pond. Unfortunately, there was no Boise to Scotland direct flight there, so I couldn't do that. But so we'll see how that 24-hour period goes. We're gonna see. Very interesting. I've never done this before.
Have a safe trip. It's fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Never been to Ireland or Scotland, so looking forward to both.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition and our broadcast partner, Trax 57. Matt, where can people check out more in Space City Weather and more about you?
Yeah, visit spacecityweather.com or theiwall.com, which is kind of our companion site that we talk about hurricanes, tropics, and extreme weather. So, yeah, we're active there. Feel free to drop in and say hi.
Awesome. Yeah, please do so. For all the listeners, please go to Space City Weather. Even if you don't live in Houston or that area, it's just a cool website to check out on the forefront of digital meteorology. So we're going to wrap it up. We'll be back with you next week. We're actually going to continue our Gulf Coast state series. We have Alexa Trishler, who's also a Jersey Shore native. She works in New Orleans, and she's going to talk to us about Louisiana and coastal flooding. So we did Florida, we got Texas, we got Louisiana, and then we're back to New Jersey for a few weeks after that. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We'll chat with you soon.